And it doesn't matter how you get knocked down in life, because that's going to happen. All that matters is that you got to get up.
That's Ben Affleck accepting the Best Picture Oscar for Argo. Affleck also took a moment to thank Canada. There's been debate about the film marginalizing our real-life contributions. Ken Taylor is the former Canadian ambassador to Iran depicted in the film, and he joins me now from New York. Mr. Taylor, we didn't see it in that little clip that we showed, but he did, in fact, thank Canada. He didn't go into any details, but he said, I thank Canada, I thank Iran, I thank my wife. Was that good enough? Because you have felt slighted by the way in which this film depicted you and depicted Canada's role in this film.
No, I wasn't too uncomfortable with how it depicted me. It was the entire Canadian effort which essentially sustained the whole, what's reflected in the movie. My colleagues in Ottawa, the people on the ground in Tehran, our invitation for them to stay with us. But it was put into a movie that was thrilling, it was entertaining, and then comes the question, what about the veracity of movies in Hollywood? I think in our case, President Jimmy Carter clarified the matter on Thursday night when he said, essentially, that Canada was the lead player and the CIA offered assistance.
And he went even further than that, right? I mean, he went on to say, I really liked this movie except for one thing, and that is that the film depicted the CIA's role as 90% and the Canadian role as 10%. And Jimmy Carter said, it's the opposite. The Canadian role was 90% and the CIA role was 10%. So why do you think Ben Affleck felt the need to kind of distort that?
Well, I think it was, to a certain extent, Ben Affleck's script was based on Tony Mendez's book, The CIA Agent. A resourceful and ingenious Tony Mendez was, but he only was there for a day and a half. And as easy as he was to work with, essentially it was a Canadian effort and under Canadian control and suggestion. The focus was on the CIA and Los Angeles, where essentially I think the focus should have been on Washington, Ottawa, and Tehran. But the clarification came through. It was a box office hit. It left the audience sustained.
When you say
excited.
clarification, what do you mean exactly? The clarification came through.
Clarification is, I think that the Canadians were the players. The CIA were contributed, but that's about the extent of it. President Carter, it's fine that since the opening in Toronto that I and some of my colleagues talked about the Canadian role, but maybe it was seen as self-serving. Whereas when the former commander-in-chief, the president, who followed the issue every single day, said declaratively that this is the way everything worked out in Tehran, I think it brings the movie, without taking away from the entertainment value of the movie, into a true perspective for Canadians. Canadians, I think, can take... Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, what do you take, though, from the argument that you could say, look, it's just a movie, there's creative license, you should be able to tell whatever story you want, it's not a historical documentary airing, on television, so it's not meant as an educational, there's no educational role here, it's really just entertainment. And so, why did you feel the need to speak out about just an entertaining movie?
Because I have no trouble with having fun at a movie. I love to be entertained at movies. However, I think there's a historical record here for Canadians, particularly young Canadians. And oddly enough, coincidentally, all three movies that were the serious contenders were contentious in this sense. Zero Doc 30, Argo, and Lincoln. So you combine one way or the other, the right for Hollywood to have poetic license, but at the same time, you want to, one way or the other, maybe go along a truth of what actually happened. In this case, I think we've got a good movie. The audience loved it. It was big at the box office. And yet, at the same time, there's a recognition now that in terms of the Canadian effort, it was underplayed. And I'd like particularly younger Canadians to remember the 3 months in Tehran as something that Canada undertook. The Prime Minister authorized it. The embassy staff at great risk executed it, and it was a Canadian program. It was a Canadian sense of achievement with, as I say, the cooperation of the CIA.
Did you have a chance to speak with Ben Affleck in the last couple of days? Did you congratulate him? Did you want the film to win? How are your feelings?
Oh, I thought it was a good movie. It was full of suspense and what have you. But, however, ever since the premiere in Toronto, I've been trying to, one way or the other, make the point that the role should have been reversed. It should have been the lead given to Canada, and
would it still have been a good movie?
Underplay and the cooperative thing. I think Canadians can pull off a good movie. I think Canadians are probably as energetic or as photogenic or as, what would you say, as fit into Hollywood mode as much as, say, Americans do. I think we're interchangeable in that sense in terms of entertainment. If you look at all the movies made in Toronto and Vancouver and Calgary, Montreal, and the Canadian participants, Canadians have many underrated talents. Maybe we lack a bit of self-confidence, but we can do it.
And maybe underrated in terms of the role in Iran during this crisis. Ken Taylor, good to speak to you. Thank you. Former Canadian ambassador to Iran, Ken Taylor, speaking from New York.